And, there's become in all of these issues, particularly to do with women, but it's been happening in recent years to do with gay, LGBT, it's been happening in relation to racial rights. People are portrayed as not being of the identity group that they are undeniably a part of if they have the wrong politics. So, in recent years, a very prominent example was Germaine Greer. There's one particular issue, a debatable issue about women's rights at the end of the road, which is whether or not trans women are women. And she won't do that. And so she gets cast out of feminism. And as I say in the book, I quote people saying, Germaine Greer is no longer a feminist. And you want to say, you what? If Germaine Greer isn't a feminist, and nobody's a feminist, it doesn't mean anything anymore. But this same thing has happened in everything. I give the example of Peter Thiel, the famous Silicon Valley tech billionaire. He happens to be gay. At the Republican convention in 2016, he comes out for the Republican nominee.
That's not allowed.
He's immediately denounced by the main gay publication in the US as not gay. They say he may sleep with men, but in no other sense is he gay. And the same thing has happened with racial issues.
Yeah.
People like Kanye West, Candace Owens, have the wrong politics.
Well, we've had that in our own politics. My very first podcast with James Cleverly, Tory party chairman, being told, along with other leading Brexiteers and Tories, being told, well, you're not, you're actually turning on your own race. Right.
The assumption is on all of these things. It happens with James Cleverly. It happens with a distinguished American scholar and author, Thomas Sowell, with the rapper Kanye West. I mean, you can go from a scholar to a rapper. Both happen to be black. It's about the only characteristic they share. But they are alleged not to be black because they have the wrong politics.
And this is a really confusing thing for those of us who like to think of ourselves as, fairly sane on these things, which is that I don't think that my entire identity is wrapped up in whether I've got tubes or not.
No, it'd be a very boring way to go about everything.
Well, wouldn't it? I'm pretty sure that I've got my own ideas, and I'm pretty sure that not everything about me is about being white or middle class or anything else. There are lots of different things about me, but mostly it's I'm me, I'm individual. I was raised to judge people as individuals. Now we have to judge people as good and bad based on the group to which they are supposedly from. That gets into very fraught difficulties when you have particularly, white, straight males, the old male and stale, which is now almost an insult.
Yes, or almost warred upon. There's an attitude of revenge in the air.
That they've done something wrong.
Yeah, and one of the points that I try to do with this book is not just to undo this game that's being played. For a game it is, but to explain why it's dangerous and why we need to get out of it. And one of the reasons is we cannot get stuck in this because there will be a game played back.
Yes.
You can't war on men for being men and not expect some kind of backlash. You can't war on people because of their skin pigmentation and not expect a backlash. It's something we need to. We are seeing.
Well, listen, we talk about the patriarchy, capital T, capital P. People talk about toxic masculinity, the Me Too campaign, and the idea again of women. Again, women are always in the role of victim, and we see that even when we're in a situation where we have, lost candidate for the Democrats for American presidency was a woman. That we've had, secretaries of state, 2 women in America. Here in Britain, 2 female prime ministers at the time where we had a female prime minister. I think a female home secretary and a female metropolitan police commissioner. We were being told that women can't get ahead, and we all live in a terrible time. Is part of this creation of this weird identity politics, as most people know it. Is that because we've never had it so good? I mean, I went into political journalism at a time when there were very few women doing it. And I'm told constantly now by women who are now, half of the mix, that, I'm not a feminist and I can't quite work out what it is they think I've done wrong other than staying around for so long. But, and they say having the wrong views. But is it that the people who are saying this now, largely young, but sometimes older, people who are old enough to know better,
right.
Is it that they just don't know how far we've come?
you have to break it down by different groups. There are certainly people who know that they're lying. They know. I give examples of people who are just doing sheer politics.
Who do you think they are?
They just, well, people of an older generation who have decided that this is the best way to win, because we can see it every day in every country in the developed West. To use racist against someone is basically to win or very nearly win. Yeah. Certainly it's to significantly trounce your opponent, throw them off their balance, yeah. And then you can do anything.
Well, they're a bad person, so you've already won.
If you can accuse them of homophobia or transphobia or being anti-female in some way, you can also win. So there are some people who, at this stage, you can clearly see, and I list some of them in the book, just clearly doing this in politics. But one of the audiences I particularly want to reach is the younger audience who are falling for this. And this is different. This is younger people who have adopted this form of catastrophizing.
In every area.
In every area.
The world is a terrible, terrible place, and it's getting worse.
And there are some, I mean, you know, to sort of steel man their case, there are certain reasons they might have for some of that. I say in the introduction of this book that in the last 10 years, the last 10 years is flooded into the mainstream, and the last 5 that it's just metastasized. But these bad ideas were around since the mid-80s at least. One of my contentions is that this is a post-financial crash issue, and that when young people in particular don't have much love of capitalism because they don't see how they can accrue much capital, there are a whole set of things in society that their parents may have expected. Their parents didn't get it easy, but got in the end. Home ownership, for instance. And younger people think, I can't see how I can ever own a home. It's perhaps inevitable that in that situation you are vulnerable to an ideology which says you could solve every form of human inequality and inequity in the world. Like, it's tempting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a meaningful thing to do. I would argue to these people, I do argue in the book, they've got to get off this for reasons I explain. The thing that they have got on, first of all, cannot provide them with meaning. And secondly, is going to provide us all with one almighty car crash.
And the car crash comes because it's not achievable, but that actually it's going to almost bring about the exact opposite of what people want. Because we are in a situation, I mean, it's sticking with women for the time being, after the Me Too stuff. And again, look, is anyone here saying we think it's a good idea that senior, very powerful men should sexually assault or abuse or insist on blackmail women in the workplace who have less power than them to get ahead and get jobs? No. So let's just state that as a given. That would be a given for all sane and reasonable people. And yet, to question whether or not that some of the talk about what's going on in the workplace, the idea that all women are going to work terrified of being sexually harassed at all times, and that women somehow have to be given some unique protection in the workplace, that women are put upon because they're not paid as much as men, they in every possible way they are vulnerable. Yeah. This has simply resulted, let's face it, a lot of companies saying, I think I'd rather not employ women.
Yes, I mean, this is the one of the many catastrophes here is when this enters the workplace. I mean, none of this is, I should just reiterate, none of this is to say that racism doesn't exist, that sexism doesn't exist, that there's some homophobia in society and more. But what we need to do is to de-weaponize this, and we've entered instead a nuclear arms race. And the issue you give of women is a very pertinent one, because it's probably the most prominent in certain characteristics, in that we're confused. Let me give an example of what I think part of the confusion is. Are women exactly the same as men? Are they less than men? Or are they better than men? Now, I would like to settle, and would like to think our society could settle on absolutely equal, but that doesn't mean that everything about them is exactly the same as men. Now, we are finding it.
We will make America great again.